Welcome to the Vegan Pulse. I am your host, Nancy Arenas, with another segment of Making Sense with Gabriel, with Gabriel Gaarden. Stick around. We'll be right back. Hi, Gabriel. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you, Nancy?
I'm doing just fine. I'm glad to have another segment of Making Sense with Gabriel.
Yeah, me too. Looking forward to it.
I can't wait to see what I learned today.
Me too. We'll see what I come up with.
Okay, so we've covered several different topics, and sometimes some of those topics have some of the same information depending, but that's because it's all part of the whole plant-based eating thing. So today I'm going to ask you, can you tell us about nutritional yeast?
Sure thing. Let's see what I know about nutritional yeast. And of course, you can fill in some gaps because I'm sure you know a lot too. So nutritional yeast, yeah, it's made from, being a yeast, I think it's made from fungus. You know, yeasts are fungi. Some people say fungi instead of fungi. I've heard that from like a mushroom pro. He calls them fungi instead of fungi. But either way, it's a fungus. And it's got some great health properties. You know, there's some studies that I've seen that actually applied nutritional yeast to, they had endurance athletes take nutritional yeast after they exercise. And exercise is wonderful. We all know that it's great for our health, but it can have an immunosuppressive effect, meaning it can kind of suppress the capacity of our immune system to function like it's supposed to when we do exercise in excess, right? So some portion of exercise is great. You know, most people need to do more or would benefit from doing more exercise. But when you get to the point of like a pretty dedicated endurance athlete who's out training for something like a marathon, or somebody who's training for like a big endurance event, like say maybe a century ride or 100-mile ride, they're putting in a lot of time in these endurance activities. Those can kind of take a real hit or a negative impact to the health of our immune system and its ability to function and prevent things like common colds, you know, basic viruses, the flu, the cold, the things that we get. That if our immune system is working better, sometimes we can prevent those sicknesses from getting really bad. You know, we can kind of nip them in the bud before they get bad and we don't get sick. But if our immune system's not working great, we might get really sick. And what's shown is that people who are training for these endurance events that are really working hard and pushing their bodies to the max, they get this immunosuppressive effect and they get sick more often, which is a super bummer. Because if you're training and you're wanting to get better, you need to keep training to keep getting better. And if you get sick, you can't do that. You got to take a lot of time off. And then your fitness starts to go down because you're not training. And so, hey, if there's anything we can do to prevent getting sick, but still being able to train really hard, that would be like a double, positive. And the application of, I think it was something like 1 to 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast per day as a supplement to people who were training for these endurance events and really pushing themselves hard, demonstrated that they had fewer bouts of illness. So they were able to train more often, they felt better, they got sick less often. And so the nutritional yeast basically had this ability to bolster or to support the health and the function of our immune system, keep us going strong, and help prevent us from getting sick, which is just a really cool side benefit to the fact that nutritional yeast just makes food taste great. And so it's just a nice thing to supplement to our diet because it adds that cheesy flavor. Popcorn, it was one of the original ingredients that people, added to popcorn to give it kind of a cheesy, interesting, delicious flavor. But turns out we can use it for a variety of things as just a way to enhance the flavor of a dish, or especially to add kind of that cheesy replacement flavor that people often miss if they've gone from a traditional American diet where we eat a lot of dairy and a lot of cheese that comes from cows and goats and animals like that. If we transition to a vegan diet and we're not getting cheese from those sources anymore, people still crave that flavor. And so you can use water or a plant-based milk And then other things like cashews that when ground up or processed in a food processor, or especially like a high-speed blender, they give a real creamy flavor. But in addition to a plant milk or something like cashews, when you're adding in the nutritional yeast, it's going to give it that extra punch, right? And nutritional yeast just tastes great. You can sprinkle it on rice and beans. You can sprinkle it on like a pasta with marinara sauce, and it adds this little cheesy flavor, kind of like you're adding. It's different than adding Parmesan cheese, but it still adds a little kick, a little extra flavor, which I think makes pasta dishes taste wonderful. And then, of course, it also is fortified. Like many of our cereals and breads and other foods, other processed foods, like plant-based milks are often fortified with things like calcium and vitamin D, and also B vitamins. It's fortified with some of these vitamins like B12. And so it's an additional source of an important vitamin that we're not getting enough of on a vegan diet. You know, when we're just eating exclusively plants, which I recommend for as many people as possible, just eat plants. They're wonderful for our bodies and, of course, the animals and the planet. But we may fall short on certain nutrients if we don't take care, you know, to plan them into our daily and our weekly routines. And so nutritional yeast is one of those nutrients. Since it has some fortification, it's going to add some of those extra things like vitamin B12 that we're not going to get enough of unless, and I still would recommend that folks take a vitamin B12 supplement, that we don't rely on fortified foods like nutritional yeast alone, because the supplement's just going to make sure that we get enough. But theoretically, if people were to eat fortified foods like nutritional yeast that are fortified in things like vitamin B12 that we need to make sure we're getting, because we're not going to get them from the plants themselves. Theoretically, if we're eating them like 3 squares a day, so multiple times throughout the day, because we need that exposure, that consistent exposure, because the amounts in fortified foods are much smaller than the amount that we're going to get in a supplement, which is much larger. So because those amounts are more modest, we need that repeated exposure throughout the day, at least 3 times. So you would need to have like a plant milk or something that has B12 in it for breakfast or another time of the day, nutritional yeast for a meal, and then any other type of fortified food, like maybe some of your plant-based meats or something like that. Again, you'd have to read the food label though, to make sure that it has vitamin B12 in it. But any kind of a fortified food that's fortified with something like B12, would make sure that you're going to get enough of that in your diet. But again, as a registered dietitian, as a nutrition pro, to make sure I'm giving people the best quality information, I'd still recommend that they take a B12 supplement. But yeah, nutritional yeast is wonderful. Sprinkle it on popcorn, sprinkle it on any kind of plant-based dish, especially pasta, and then make any kind of cheesy dish, like with, in your food processor. You can put it in there with, and then I also add it to pesto. So I'll use it in a cheesy, I actually just made a beautiful vegan hollandaise sauce. Wow. Hollandaise is wonderful, right? People think of it on like eggs Benedict, a very popular dish.
Or on delicious asparagus.
Breakfast dish. Yeah, asparagus. Yeah. And so I used just water, or you could use plant-based milk, cashews, nutritional yeast, lemon juice, some white pepper, a little bit of cayenne pepper for the white pepper and the cayenne pepper give it a little kick. The lemon gives it a little tang. And then the nutritional yeast gives it just an overall background, just good flavor and just beautiful. So good. You can put, it's so good. You put it on anything, other than like your oatmeal and blueberries. You probably wouldn't want it on that. But last night I just cooked up, a lentil pasta dish, and then I sauteed some scallions and, or not scallions, but some onions and garlic, and then some broccoli and green beans and bell peppers. And then I threw in some edamame. And then I threw in some tofu as well. And I sauteed that so nice, but then I put that vegan hollandaise sauce on top, and it was fire. It was so good. And again, great use of nutritional yeast. It's going to help bolster your immune system, and it's going to make your food taste great. So it's a win-win.
And I was going to say, not just about the story that you said about helping the athletes with the story that you gave, especially while they were training, but that it is for vegans who need B12, it's, it gives you that B12 that you need. And that is so good as a replacement for cheesy flavored stuff. Like you said, popcorn. I like to put kale in the oven and then sprinkle the nutritional yeast in it and then cook that, bake that, and it comes out crunchy and cheesy. It's just awesome.
Yeah, and again, we all know that we need to eat more greens. And so wonderful, delicious way to eat greens. Some people may love kale no matter how it's served in a fresh salad, sauteed on a skillet, or baked in the oven and made into kale chips. But some people may not. And so that's a great way to eat kale with that nutritional yeast flavor. It's going to be crunchy, it's savory, it's cheesy, it's delicious. And so we get our nutritional yeast and we're getting more greens, which we all need more greens.
Awesome. Thank you, Gabriel, for another chance to talk to you on Making Sense with Gabriel.
Thanks for having me on, Nancy.
Bye-bye.
Great to be here. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on another Vegan Pulse. I am your host, Nancy Arenas. Remember to check out our website, like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have a pulse, you have a purpose. Live vegan.